Good evening, visitors. Welcome to the Australian War Memorial's last post ceremony. My name is Troy Clayton, and joining us today from the Royal Australian Air Force is leading aircraftsman Jacob Lazarus. Today, we commemorate Malaya and Borneo Veterans Day and recognise the Australian military personnel who fought in the Malayan emergency from 1948 to 1960 and the Indonesian confrontation from 1962 to 1966. This year marks the 60th anniversary of the deployment of Australian forces to North Borneo to defend Malaysia during the Indonesian confrontation. In the early to mid-1960s, Indonesia and Malaysia fought an undeclared war which came to involve troops from Australia, Britain and New Zealand. Under the leadership of President Sukarno, who opposed the formation of the Federation of Malaysia, Indonesian forces carried out armed incursions, subversion and sabotage to destabilise the Federation. Fighting began in earnest when Indonesia launched a series of cross-border raids into Malaysian territory in early 1963. Australia's commitment to operations against Indonesia in Borneo and West Malaysia began with 3 RAR and 1 SAS squadron deploying to Sarawak and Brunei in early 1965, where they fought as part of a larger British force. 4 RAR and 2 SAS squadrons served in Sarawak in 1966. Australia also sent detachments from the Royal Australian Signals Corps, an artillery detachment, and 5 squadrons of the Royal Australian Engineers to Borneo. Ships of the Royal Australian Navy served in surrounding waters, and several Royal Australian Air Force squadrons were also involved. As Australia and Indonesia maintained their diplomatic relationship, these cross-border operations remained secret until 1996, and confrontation received little coverage in the Australian press. Continuing negotiations between Indonesia and Malaysia ended the conflict, and the two sides signed a peace treaty in Bangkok in August 1966. Today, we pay our respects to the 23 Australians who died as a result of their service during confrontation and who are commemorated here on the Roll of Honour, and to the survivors who returned home. This evening, we warmly welcome Malaya Borneo veterans who are joining us here today. Mr. Anthony John, Woden Valley RSL Sub-Branch President representing ACT RSL, and Group Captain Bruce Chandler, retired, representing the Air Force Association. We welcome the veterans who have served, those that are still serving, and their families that love and support them. The live stream of this ceremony is made possible by the Return and Services League of Australia and the RSL and Services Clubs Association. We welcome members who are watching the broadcast of this ceremony across Australia. During this evening's ceremony, wreaths will be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection by visitors to the memorial. If you're able, please stand and join in singing the National Anthem. Thank you. If you're able, you may be seated. The Australian War Memorial was the vision of Charles Bean, Australia's First World War official historian. Bean landed with the Australian troops on Gallipoli and stayed with them at the front through to the end of the war. The idea of this national memorial and museum came to him at Pozières, France, in the depths of the bloody fighting of 1916. Bean's idea was that this would be a place where families and friends could mourn their loved ones buried in faraway places. It would also be a place that could help all Australians understand what these men and women had endured and what they had done for us. Bean's vision, to which we remain true, is best expressed as inscribed in the entrance to the memorial's galleries. Here is their spirit, in the heart of the land they loved, and here we guard the record which they themselves made. Tonight, we'll read the story behind just one of those on the Roll of Honour, which lists the names of more than 103,000 men and women who have given their lives for us in war and on operations for more than a century. But first we present a lament, Flowers of the Forest. Wreaths or floral tributes will now be laid at the base of the Pool of Reflection.
Today, we remember and pay tribute to Lieutenant David John Bryan. David Bryan was born in Sydney, New South Wales on the 27th of November 1938 to Alfred Edward Ellis Bryan and Phyllis May Nee Vandenberg. He was educated at Sydney Boys Grammar School, where he was known as an excellent student and sportsman, particularly on the rugby field. Bryan was a member of the school's cadet unit, and by 1955, his final year, he had been promoted to cadet under officer. He also won the school's prize for the best all-round student. He entered the Royal Military College Duntroon in January 1956. Alongside his early academic prowess, his achievements on the rugby field soon saw him elevated to the college's Colts team, an outstanding achievement for a junior cadet. Bryan's on-field courage was admired by his peers, but it was also his undoing. By 1958, he had suffered a series of serious head injuries and was unable to continue the academic component of his training. He transferred to the Officer Cadet School at Portsea in Victoria. Here, his development as a leader was rewarded in his final term, when he was made Colour Sergeant of the Company of Officer Cadets. He graduated with the rank of Lieutenant in the Royal Australian Infantry Corps. He marched in to the 2nd Battalion, Royal Australian Regiment at Holsworthy in February 1959. Soon after, he was transferred to 13 National Service Battalion, serving there until January 1960. Brian returned to 2 RAR, but was then detached as an instructor to the 4th Battalion, then the Army's infantry training establishment at Ingleburn. In March 1962, he was posted to the 3rd Battalion Royal Australian Regiment at Enoggera, Queensland. He became a platoon commander of 11 Platoon D Company. After being in a relationship for 3 years, he married Sarah Chapman in Sydney the same year. In mid-1963, 3 RAR was deployed to Malaysia and was based on the west coast at Tarandak. Soon after the battalion arrived, Sarah joined her husband and they moved into married quarters in Malacca. During this time, relations between Malaysia and Indonesia had deteriorated to a point where a status of confrontation existed between Malaysia and Indonesia. Malaysia also faced the threat of attack by remnants of the Malayan National Liberation Army who had escaped over the Malaysia-Thailand border when the Malayan emergency was declared over in July 1960. As a result, Australian infantrymen were involved in operations along the border to intercept communist terrorists. In February 1964, 3 RAR was tasked with such an operation, and Brian's platoon was one of those deployed. At the time, Sarah was 7 months pregnant with their first child. On the 5th of March, while on patrol, one of the men in Brian's platoon accidentally fired his Owen machine carbine, the round striking Brian in the head. He was stretchered to a landing zone from where he was evacuated to hospital by a Royal Air Force Wessex helicopter. He was pronounced dead on arrival. He was 25 years old. Amid some controversy, he became the first soldier to be laid at rest in the Tarandak Military Cemetery. Sarah endured great stress following her husband's death and went into early labour. Their son, David, was born in May. He too joined the Australian Army, graduating RMC in 1988 and having a 20-year career. In 1966, Sarah married David Ferguson, a future Major General. After visiting Tarandak in 2014, Sarah and David began campaigning for the repatriation of David Bryan and other Australians buried there. In May 2015, the Australian government offered the next of kin the chance to repatriate their loved ones from Tarandak. Then, on the 2nd of June 2016, as part of Operation Reunite, the remains of David Bryan and 32 other Australians were repatriated home. David Bryan was laid to rest 8 days later in Pinaroo Lawn Cemetery, Brisbane. The epitaph on his memorial plaque reads, "Beloved husband of Sarah, father of David, in God's care." Sadly, his mother Phyllis died aged 103, only months before her son's remains were returned home. Brian's photograph is displayed today beside the pool of reflection. This is but one of the many stories of service and sacrifice told here at the Australian War Memorial. We now remember Lieutenant David John Bryan, who gave his life for us, for our freedoms, and in the hope of a better world.
If able, please stand for the reading of the Ode and the sounding of the last post.
They shall grow not old as the years. They shall grow not old as we that are left grow old. Age shall not weary them, nor the years condemn. At the going down of the sun, and in the morning, we will remember them.
We'll remember them. Lest we forget. We leave you this evening with the words of the memorial's founder, Charles Bean. Many a man lying out there at Poziere or in the low scrub of Gallipoli, with his poor, tired senses barely working through the fever of his brain, has thought in his last moments, well, it's over. But in Australia, they will be proud of this. Ladies and gentlemen, girls and boys, that concludes the last post ceremony. On behalf of the director, staff and volunteers, thank you for visiting the Australian War Memorial today. We wish you all a very pleasant evening. Thank you.